first job programming in August of 2000, so I'm getting old. Anyway, I currently work at still hands-on doing programming. And I want to talk about, our ideas about what it means to code, what it means to do software, and how our perceptions of what our field actually is impacting the software we create. Because I think we're creating a lot of these self-fulfilling prophecies, and we are kind of using the results of that to kind of justify why things are the way they are in the first place. So there are some questions we need to ask. And I want to focus on, two main things. And firstly, this idea that, we keep talking about programming. It's like a natural fit in the science and math kind of environment. My kids, they get to do a bit of programming every now and then at school, and it's always in the context of, math class, and all these like women in STEM, we need more women in STEM. It has become almost synonymous with, we need women in programming, or at least seems that way to me, being a programmer. And that's, I fit in there. I love science. I was good at math at school. So that's the one thing I want to address. And secondly, this comes up more in like our recruiting efforts now. We're always saying like, to be a good programmer, we want people who love learning new things, like bring it on. We love learning new things. And this is essential because our field changes so fast. There's so much going on. If you don't really like or are capable of learning new things, you're not going to do well. And there's a cause and effect thing here that I think we need to address, okay? Anyway, so those are the two main issues I want to talk about. And this, I think we can all agree, I think, that this pretty much defines who we are today. We are like the science geeks who love a challenge of learning new stuff. This is who we are. But let's be honest, like how is that actually going? How's that going? I did a Pixabay search for people using computers, and I got this. And look at that! Look how happy they are. Look at those serene smiles. And but like, who are we kidding? Sadly, this is much more the reality out there. Yeah, people way too often using software does not make people happy. We are causing a lot of pain and suffering, actually, and this is not okay. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole reason we are writing software is to solve some kind of human need, right? At every level, actually. I mean, unless we're already under the power of some AI overlords or something like that. I mean, it's human needs that are causing us to write software in the first place. And we are very often failing the humans that we're meant to be helping. And this is especially true for software that people have to use at work. So, okay, but then you say, right, it's just a usability thing. We need to get more UX involved, right? So the users, they just don't appreciate good software when they see it, right? But us programmers, at least we know how to appreciate, how to see the value of the code that we're producing, right? Sadly, as we all know, I think this cartoon by Abstruse Goose pretty much sums up the experience we all feel whenever we go into a new code base. It's like, what is all this crap, Why is this structure here, Where could this bridge possibly lead? This is bridge, these comments aren't really helping, What is this horribly designed street? Good God, what the hell does this contraption do, right? And this pretty much, sadly, sums up a lot of our day-to-day experiences of trying to, understand the code we have to work in. And we've all seen variations on this, right? This is our, code quality metric is the number of what the fucks per minute in the code review. If you just have a couple, that's pretty good. Just a couple, then you're like, wow, this is good stuff. If too much, okay, then we have a problem. And I'm sorry, this is not normal. This is not okay. This is we have like 4 or 5 year university degrees that supposedly have taught us how to do our job, in addition to years and years of experience. And still we are here, where every code review there's like, what? I have no idea. What are you even trying to do here? Yeah. Other fields do not have this issue. Yeah, I mean, there are architects, some architects are better than others, but you don't have people going like, what the, I have no idea, what is this, what, this is not an issue, yeah? I mean, can you imagine? They're like, what have they done here? This is, other fields do not have this problem. And we all, whenever we see this code, they're like, oh my God. We always have these excuses. It's like, oh, well, the guys who wrote this, they're idiots. That's the problem. Or, oh, but this was written in Visual Basic. That's the problem. We just need this new framework or, new platform, new library, or new language. Well, let me just rewrite this and I'll get it right. You'll see. Which is why we are perpetually in the state of making this new platform or the new solution. We're rewriting something that the users already hate to varying degrees, but we're just re-implementing it with some new technology. Yeah? And all too often, we are totally failing to actually make a difference where it matters. So again, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and our approach, it's not working that well. This isn't working, and it's not the tech, it's us, yeah? This technology stuff, it's more or less the same things that we're reinventing all the time. I'm old enough that I'm starting to see this myself, that the ideas that were true when I started are starting to come back again. It's, oh, now that's hip again. All right, okay. We keep going around in circles, reinventing the same things with slightly different tech. So I think it's time we ask ourselves, are we actually any good at this? Are we good at making software? Or more importantly, are we focusing on the right skills? I don't think we are. I think we need to, go down to the basics, what is programming? What is coding actually all about? And I've been trying to think back to, how I, started learning about programming, and I see what my kids are being exposed to in schools. And normally it boils down to this. We're taught syntax. Programming. It's we need to learn conditionals and looping and here's a function. Here's how you write a class. Here's how you use this API. Here's how you call this thing. Here's a variable, whatever. And this is not really, this is important. Obviously, we need to know these things, right? This is totally at the base. This is like learning the alphabet if you want to be a writer. Yeah, having a vocabulary that's useful. But as we can see here, you don't even have to read the code here to know that this is absolute garbage. So you can find this in this is the Gilded Rose refactoring kata, and this is an absolute mess. Despite the fact that, hey, technically it compiles. It compiles, it even works, yeah? And when it comes to the programming basics here, they've really nailed the if-else statements. They're 10 out of 10. Look at all those if-else statements. They really know how to use the basic programming APIs here. There's also a loop in there. There's a for loop, and there's a function. Yeah, and that function is even called in a loop, So this is they really know how to program. There are variables in there, and again, the performance is okay. Or again, it could be improved, but it's not the performance that's the problem with this code. That is not the issue here. And most importantly, it's F#, which we all know is a modern superior language that helps us write better code, right? See. My point is here that, this is even though we've kind of learned a new technology, if you don't know how to write code, it doesn't help to use, any language or framework, And again, none of these basic kind of coding things are really getting at what it means to write good code. And sadly, code like this, maybe not this bad. This is pretty horrible. But there are, any number of horrible coding implementations out there. And this reinforces this idea that to be a programmer, you have to be really smart. And you have to be really smart to understand what the hell's going on here, right? You need a massive brain to be able to understand what on earth is happening here, But sadly, we often perversely reward people, who are able to work with this nonsense, because there will invariably be a couple of people in the company who are able to understand the complexity in the code, right? And and everyone's like, wow, he's so smart. He can he gets the task and he solves it immediately. 10x developer, my God. Everyone else is like, what the fuck? And he delivers every time, mostly because, these are the people who've written the stuff in the first place, right? And we really need to get away from this idea where we reward people for understanding absolutely incomprehensible complexity and reward people instead for creating stuff that's easy to understand. That's where our brain power should go. And it is not today. And, thinking back to when I started, when I went into programming and I decided this is going to be my field, this is where I'm going to work, I thought that I was going to be working on these complex, incomprehensible coding algorithms. That's what I thought I was getting into. Code, right? The very name. It's like it implies that it's this mystical, cryptic thing that only a select few are smart enough to understand, right? And I was going to be one of those people. I like that idea. I thought that would be really cool, right? But this is not a healthy kind of perception of what coding should be about. I remember I did a presentation for some lawyers a few years back, and I tried to explain to them that, code is actually English instructions, and, normal people should be able to understand it. And they're like, no, that can't be possible. But I mean, if everyone has this idea that code is this, horribly complex stuff, then we're more likely to accept it when we see it. This is not good. And I was reminded again of my initial kind of, conceptions of what programming was all about when I did the Advent of Code challenge last year. How many people have done the Advent of Code challenge? Not nearly enough. You all need to do this now or, at least in December. It is amazing. So it's this every day in December or until Christmas. You get this little coding challenge and just look at the design of the web page. I mean, it is fantastic. I love the total basic. And even if you view source, look at that. There's hardly any JavaScript at all. It's just like, HTML, and it is so beautiful. And anyway, every day you get this little challenge where you typically you get this input file that's in this cryptic format, and you have to parse the input file, and then you have to do data traversal algorithms and stuff to find some kind of result, and then you get stars if you get it right. And it is so much fun. But doing that last year, what really struck me was this is nothing like what I do for my day-to-day job. This has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with my day-to-day job. This is not the kind of things, I'm not working on weird little data traversal algorithms, I mean, some people are, mind you, some people really are, but I bet you the vast majority of the people here, that's not what we're doing, We might wish we were, because it's a lot of fun, but that's not what we do. And even at the algorithm level. What an algorithm is, is basically what we're doing is we are writing instructions. We're writing instructions. There's work that needs to be done, and we don't want to do it, so we get a computer to do it instead, right? We are writing instructions, and that is what algorithms are. And again, unlike the typical things you get to do at university or the Advent of Code challenge, we are writing a shit ton of instructions. We are writing hundreds of thousands of lines of instructions. You can't just have them all in one file, or I guess you could, like the person who wrote the refactoring kata example previously. You could put everything in one file, but again, that's not, what we should be doing. And what we really are doing, or what we should be focusing on, is, to take all that work that needs to be done, and we need to think about, well, what are the, roles and responsibilities here? We need to categorize the work, and we need to assign the work. Who, what entities, deal with this thing, and how do they communicate? Which fields belong in this data structure? How is it communicated over there? It's all about categorization and organization, and we're, orchestrating work that needs to be done. And honestly, is that even a STEM field at all? I'm not sure. To me, the task of organization and categorization, that's more like a combination of management and documentation, if you look at it. And I think that this is why we care so much about things like, agile and lean and XP and DevOps and all this stuff, all the processes by which we are made to work, because processes and organization and management, that is actually what we do. That is what programming is. Like my husband's a mechanical engineer, and I think they don't have the same interest in processes and stuff like that. I think this is actually what we're doing, and we don't even necessarily realize that this is our field. We are organizing work. We are managing work. Not the only, but one of the core differences between, our type of management and other type of management is that our workers, they all do exactly what we say, which I guess for some managers out there might be like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Not really. Basically, here, write Merry Christmas on both cakes. And of course that says Merry Christmas on both cakes. I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. For my favorite movie, one day, lad, all this will be yours. Oh, the curtains. No, not the curtains. You have to be so painfully specific about everything when you're programming. Everything has to be exactly so, So, disregarding all the kind of skills you need, I think personality trait-wise, there are, the 3 Ps that are essential to be a good programmer is you need to be patient. The computer is an absolute idiot. You need to be patient. You need to be persevering. You can't just sit there passively waiting for the computer to figure it out. You have to keep at it, and you have to be a bit of a pedant. You have to really, really care about the details because, otherwise you'll go nuts because the computer needs that. And to put it in a bit more, positive spin, I grew up, I'm half American, so I grew up with this book, so hopefully enough of you recognize this, but anyway, you have to be the little engine that could, you have to, I think I can, when you're stuck with this YAML config file that, won't do what you want it to do, you're like, okay, I think I can, and you will manage in the end, you have to be an optimist, you have to be very persistent and believe in yourself, and you can do it. But, none of these things that actually matter, to create good software. None of these things necessitate being this kind of science genius. It doesn't hurt to be a science genius. Learning science and math are wonderful. It doesn't make you, you don't need it, but it's not a requirement. And even these kinds of algorithmic, performance issues that we kind of imagine are, that are essential, that you need to have this like scientific mindset, I think they aren't. They pop up anywhere, they pop up all over the place, especially, the types of performance things most of us actually have to deal with. Just take things like managing work in a restaurant kitchen, and there are any number of examples I could do. But here, like, how do you organize the work? How do you organize the staff? Do you have like one chef? Okay, you do the carpaccio, and you do the risotto, and you do the panna cotta or something. Is that how you organize stuff? Or do you say, well, okay, you do whatever table 3 orders, do you group it like that? Or do you say, okay, you do all the egg work, you break the eggs, you whisk the eggs, you separate the eggs, you're the egg person. Okay, frying pan, anything that needs frying, you go to this guy. Oven, heating, okay, that's this guy. Now, there are any number of ways, of course, just as in programming, there are any number of ways that you can solve any issue. But it doesn't take a kind of a tech genius to realize that maybe this is probably not the most efficient one. This is probably not very efficient. Like none of these guys are responsible for anything that actually gives any value to anyone. And there's going to be a lot of unnecessary I/O, right? There's going to be a lot of communication between the various parts. You need someone to organize how the work between these guys are coordinated. This is probably not going to be your best option. You don't need to be this tech genius to figure this out. In fact, though, what seems to be true is that the tech geniuses are precisely the people who find out that this is a good idea, because this all too often is just what we end up with like microservices architecture gone horribly wrong, where you have all these tiny little things that don't do anything that gives any value, and they have to communicate with every other service, and it's a total nightmare, and no one can debug anything or figure out why things don't work. It's us that do this kind of thing, And how many people haven't seen, or software architecture and organizations like this, where you have all the front-end code is like here, and you have your front-end team, and then you have your back-end team, and then, are the rules in your application? Then we need a rules engine, or, some nonsense like that. And then, messaging. Here, all of the messaging is over here. This is our messaging team. And again, none of these things deliver anything that actually can, give value to anyone. Everything is dependent on everything. And then, of course, UX, the people who actually get to meet the people who actually have requirements, they're a totally separate team. They get to talk with the users, and they make pretty little drawings, and everything's nice. And then they hand that over to the tech team, and we're like, what the heck? I can't even, how would I even, this is impossible. But then it's too late because they're off to the next project. And then you have then you have your testing organization that gets to check if all of that chaos of coordination actually delivers anything of value. This is the kind of stuff that we as tech geniuses figure out all the time. This is not okay. And the worst part is we don't even notice that we have a problem because we're too excited, we're using Next.js. It's amazing. Oh my God, the rules engine takes 100,000 requests per second. Woo! We're using Kafka. Yes, we don't notice that we're, totally messing up the whole thing. And, it's understandable in a way that we organize things this way, that we have our, isolate the various tech levels on their own, because given that everything, all these new technologies keep coming out, being full stack is practically impossible, Everything, every year, there are 5 new frameworks that you need to learn for every layer of this type of stuff, It's impossible to really have a good grasp of every layer as it is today. Just front end, we've gone from, server-side rendering was totally fine, and then it's server-side, that's terrible. Now we've got jQuery, and then, next 5 minutes is jQuery is terrible. We need to go to Backbone. Not Backbone, is awful. Angular, not Angular. React, blah, blah, blah. And it just keeps going on. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with any of these later things. Every level here has improvements over that. That's not the point. I'm not trying to criticize any of the individual technologies here. I'm just saying we really need to stop, this endless rewriting everything because someone has a new framework out there, We are causing the situation that, that you need to be able to learn new things all the time. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way, And I know that lots of women typically don't feel comfortable doing stuff where they don't, feel that they are experts on what they're doing, right? This is a well-known thing that men are happy to jump into stuff. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's okay, I'll manage, And women typically are a lot more. They like actually knowing what they're doing. And it's in software, it's shouldn't we be valuing knowing what we're doing? We would rather have people who don't know what they're doing because it's impossible to have a full grasp of all this new stuff. And we're encouraging that, And I don't know of any other industry that gets away with this kind of thing. No one else, maybe fashion industry, they change stuff all the time, but any other serious industry, they would never get away with this stuff. You don't have oh my God, this drill is so old-fashioned, we have to tear down your whole house, Bosch just came out with a new series of power tools. I'm sorry, your house has to go, and it's for your own good, because if we don't change out all the screws in your house, no one will ever be able to work on your house ever again, because no one will want to use those old tools, How are we getting away with this? Honestly. We are spending, we're obviously making a fortune off this, right? And we're having fun because we're learning new things, so we're good, right? But how are we getting away with it? Why are people paying us so much money to behave like this? Someone has to catch on soon, and I'd like for us to be kind of ahead of the curve so we can, anyway. But yeah, trying to, it's physically impossible to know all the new things for all the stuff, It's physically impossible to actually be the kinds of experts that we need to really, create good stuff that we know works well. Yeah? I mean, it's like 24/7. It's more than 24/7. I mean, if you have time to learn all of those things well, at depth, knowing the details, then you don't have time for anything else. Like knowing what actually matters. Yeah? What the software is for. Again, this is what we're seeing. Yeah, we're so focused on the tech. We're so focused on the kind of, enjoying and for ourselves to learn all these new stuff that we're not focusing on what actually matters. Yeah. Like, are we actually any good at this? So I think we really need to rethink what skills are needed. Yeah? Our current perceptions about programming are keeping people out. People are self-selecting out of the recruitment pool. They can't even imagine, being a person. Can you imagine liking, being really interested in communication or writing or just organizing stuff? I know lots of people who are amazing at organizing stuff, and they love organizing stuff. Yeah, it would never occur to them to even think that programming could be something for them. And this is a problem. I mean, again, people shouldn't be thinking, oh, am I good at math? I mean, who cares? We should be asking these things. These are the things that we should be asking ourselves to, whether or not you would be a good programmer, Again, like, are you good at explaining things? This is like, we can't even understand our own code bases at the moment, This is not good. I mean, imagine what our code bases would look like if the people who wrote software were recruited not from not primarily because they were good at maths or anything like that. Imagine what our code bases would look like if the people who wrote the software primarily focused on clear communication and like good organization skills. Huh? I think our code bases would look a lot better. Yeah? And even like, I can't even remember at university, I can't even remember learning about these things, reasoning about like, how do we organize the data structures? Before I started university, I did programming at kind of high school level, and there we learned about database modeling. And there we talked about like normalizing a data model and stuff like what belongs where. That's the only time during my education anyway, where we actually focused on this kind of thing. I think this is a serious problem because this, more than anything else, at every level of our work, this is what matters. Being able to think about like, from the top level architecture to just one class or, a module or whatever your programming language calls these things, which fields belong in this data structure and why? Huh? How do we reason about our code bases? How do we reason about state? How do we make our code testable? How do we, these kinds of things? That's what matters. That's what we need to learn about, and that's what we should focus on. And again, I'm not saying that these like math skills, that doesn't make you a bad programmer. I'm just saying it doesn't make you a good programmer. And so often, you hear this, surprisingly convincing argument for lots of people that, women, they don't choose programming because women are naturally more interested in people than men. And I'm like, how is that relevant? Like, being interested in people doesn't mean you can't be interested in playing the guitar or being good at math, or just like being interested in math doesn't mean you can't be good at communicating or organizing things. Yeah, it's possible to have multiple interests simultaneously, right? So I'm not saying that the people here, we are perfectly capable, of course, of creating amazing software. We need to reconsider what it is that makes our software great. And it is the ability to have good abstractions, And it's not about like, just taking that, refactoring code example, and just every 5 lines of code, you extract a method, and like, yes, now I've organized my code. It's not about that, yeah? You need to be able to think about how your code is actually executing and what work is being done. How do these things, who needs what responsibility and all that kind of stuff. And this is, I think, the one thing where object orientation beats functional programming. Actually, I prefer functional programming, but object-oriented programming, at least it makes it easier to kind of think about these, things like there's someone doing some work, But anyway, it's being able to reason about how the code works. That's what matters. We desperately need to spend less time just learning the next new framework, So much time now, we're like, and every level, we need to go to the cloud. And then it's like, actually on-prem is probably better. Everything keeps going back and forth. We need to learn, we need to spend time just learning about the basics of what is important to us and what makes our code actually work. And if we get those skills right, it doesn't matter, firstly, it doesn't matter what language or what frameworks we use, because you can use anything to make a decent solution, mostly. If you know how to write code, if you know how to think about good abstractions, then you will be able to write a solution in any language, and more importantly, you will then be able to know that, F# or Clojure or whatever, you'll know that these are better languages, and you'll know why they're better languages, and you will use those better languages to write better code. Because if you don't have that basic skill set, you'll just make a complete mess of whatever you're doing in that language. And then you'll say, I tried F#, it's crap, look at this horrible code, Yeah? Or, and this is, we really need to start figuring out what actually matters. And finally, we need more human interest. We need to start, caring about, not just like, does my component have, decent throughput? Can I handle, 5 million requests a minute or whatever? This matters, but it doesn't matter as much as looking at, well, how does this component that I'm working on, how does that actually solve a human need? We need to figure out what are the actual human needs that we are helping serve, and we need to think about how the whole ecosystem works, and to help organize our stuff so that we are actually providing the positive change that people actually want to see in their lives. And we need to care about, again, we are a very select little group. We like changes. Our users might be old retired people who, got their first computer when they were 65. They hate it when things change. Yeah? They don't care if the UI looks like it was designed in 2010. They would much rather have that, and then the buttons were in the same place. We need to actually understand our users and provide things that they actually need, because that's what matters. So that was all I had. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day at NDC.